Hey, Brian. Nice. Very nice. First in. Good going. So I'm sitting here, guys, and I don't have my AMA schedule sheet, cheat sheet, whatever we call it. So I'm flying solo here right now. So I have no idea what the news topics are. I don't know if there's Reddit posts. I don't know what Kevin Explains Crypto is this week. But I'm sure it'll float around. It'll get to me somehow here in the next few minutes. So we'll see what happens. But for now, we'll just sit here and chat. You know, why not? So how's everybody doing? How's self-isolation going for everybody? And for me, it's pretty much business as usual so far. So nothing really to say about it, to be honest. Yeah, Bjorn, man. It's all this working from home nonsense. It's turning you soft. You know, gotta really keep the eye on the clock. Haha, here's my little AMA guy here. Now I have my AMA cheat sheet. Cool. Okay, feeling better about myself. How's the CSD developing? CSD still doing what it's supposed to do. Actually, was going to do a walkthrough today with a potential issuer, but we pushed it back till Monday simply because they're on the other side of the world, and we just couldn't find a time today to get it done. But we will get it done on Monday. We're still aiming for first issuance in April. We have CoinMetro could be a potential issuer, so we'll have to see how that rolls out as well. That wouldn't be one of the first issuers, that's for sure. But CoinMetro could be a potential issuer in the first few months in the sandbox. We also have a company in Japan, real estate venture in Japan. We have a credit provider here in Estonia. We have a secondary market kind of platform here in Estonia. We have this other project on this side of the world in Brazil. That's rather unique. So yeah, there's a few things potentially, but still don't have our first official issuer lined up yet. When do you take some of XCM off every time he falls? Okay, working from home and going mad. Need some hopium. Hi, Jeff Fuel. Hey man, I worked from home for 20 years. And I made it. So I think everybody else will be able to do it for a month or two or three. But it's difficult to adjust. Everybody that doesn't work from home wishes they could, and as soon as they can, they're like, man, why did I wish for this? You know, that's literally why they came up with the term. Don't you might not like what you wish for or whatever. Be careful what you wish for. Won't be able to use XCM as collateral in TRAM. XCM for TRAM, yeah. Look. The market needs to be a bit more robust because basically it's much easier for people to go into negative balances with volatility in XCM. So it needs to be a bit more liquid. So really it's about building up the liquidity, which means we need to build up our client base. So when we start kicking off marketing, we start to build up our client base, it'll make it easier for us to make that decision. Why is BTC rising? Is it really rising though? I mean, it's risen off the bottom, that's for sure. But it's been pretty much stuck right around that 6,000, 6.1. So just under, let's say, heading up towards between 6.5 and 7K USD. Nobody wants to buy it there. But everybody's holding, hoping it'll go higher. Basically, it's getting into a bit of a, this is why chart reading is so ridiculous, guys, because I could draw on this chart 10 different things. I could draw a bearish pennant, a bullish pennant, a bearish flag, a bullish flag. I could probably draw, I could almost make a case for a head and shoulders pattern on the daily. If I look at something, a wave theory, I could probably say we're in 3 different waves depending on where I start. If I look at Fibonacci, we're definitely in a Fibonacci retracement. There's a million. If you're bullish, you can make a case for being bullish. If you're bearish, you can make a case for being bearish. If I pull myself away from the market and look at it without even thinking about the fundamentals, right? Corona and everything else. I would look at this thing and say bearish, short-term bearish. If I peg in the Corona, if I'm a Bitcoin maximalist who think that there's some type of, well, if I'm a correlation guy, a no correlation guy, a negative correlation guy, now everybody's coming out of the woodwork, right? Everybody that used to just say, when there's a crisis, there's going to be no correlation, and then there was correlation. Like, well, that's not exactly correlation. It's actually, but it's not anti-correlation. It's actually, everybody starts coming out of the woodwork with nonsense. If I take into account Corona and the fact that we haven't seen the worst news out of this, and that even the initial news caused a knee-jerk reaction down to the bottom, I would say even more bearish, at least in the short term. What has been done this week at CM? Still no new dashboard or anything noticeable from an external view this month. Lots of stuff, actually. So I've been working on setting up new or expanding our banking partnerships. I've been working on expanding our partnerships to be able to provide those great virtual IBANs, not just in the EU, but elsewhere. Working on different payment arrangements, working on getting a more robust system for merchant acquiring, working with our new compliance staffer to make, along with Oliver in product and Salvatore in development, so that we can all work together to even more fully streamline the onboarding process so that we can get tier 1 in there with fiat, with no proof of address needed, and get them onboarded as quick as possible in the most automated fashion as possible. We've just rolled out, I think 30 minutes ago or something, our newest version of that KYC onboarding. It's going to get even better. We're working on that as well. Dashboard is being worked on, being standardized, yeah, it's all being worked on. It hasn't been released yet, but the goal is to have something early next week in either Sandbox RC, something like that, and then slowly rolled out to the public in terms of the dashboard. But there's been a lot going on, that's for sure. Lots and lots going on. As most people know here, I guess we brought in a new compliance officer. We also have our head of digital now, who's working diligently to get marketing rolling. Lots of things. We were contacted by Google. Since we're registered with FinCEN in the US, we should be approved for them to be able to do ads in the US. That's a big thing. For upcoming advertising campaigns, we're working with a local company here for Twitter and Facebook to make sure our ads are approved there. So lots of things going on actually behind the scenes. And like it's kind of cool in the fact that in the past, when banks work 9 to 5 from an office Monday to Friday, to get an answer outside of those business hours was almost impossible. But I literally got emails from banks over the weekend because people are working from home. So, they can't separate home from work, and they answer emails outside of office hours. It's great. I've never seen that happen before. So some light at the end of the Corona tunnel. Do you think the situation will affect marketing? No, it won't affect us rolling out with marketing. I think it may have a positive effect. Everybody's home. Everybody's online. You have a lot more captive eyes than you normally would Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So it potentially could work in our favor. I've seen in the past that vices like gambling, which trading is gambling for many people, and actually do better during times of crisis. On top of that, people losing their incomes, potentially losing their incomes, losing part of their income, seeing their 401k, their portfolios, their pension funds dwindle, and not necessarily trusting the traditional market, tend to look for alternatives. So also could be good for us. Yeah, we know. Look, everything. This is just from Wannabe down here. You need to work faster on KYC streaming and marketing. Look, if you know somebody who wants to help us out or jump on the team, all for it. Look, we work pretty fast. You might not see all the things that happen because we don't release every single small update. We release updates after we create new packages, new things that we feel need to be pushed, like what we did today. We're also now re-looking at third parties to see, also because of Ignium, because of the CSD, which will need to be compatible with multiple KYC kind of providers so that we can enable MTFs to easily get their clients onboarded through the CSD. So we're looking at third parties again as well. We're looking at a lot of things. And yes, it'd be great if everything was faster in life, Unfortunately, sometimes you have limitations. We still have limitations, right? We still don't have 1,000 people working for us. We still don't have. So obviously we're still limited. But let me tell you, everybody on the team is working overtime. Everybody's putting in 110%, some even 115. You know who you are. And everybody's doing overtime. Everybody's doing everything they can. Even the new people that just kind of got thrown into the fire are already getting their hands involved in a million different things. So we're doing a lot of stuff, guys. And I think we're more open than most companies. So a lot of times you know exactly what's going on, but that doesn't mean every single tiny little update that happens we make this big hubbub and tell everybody what's going on, because that would be nearly impossible. Right? We spend our whole time updating and then we wouldn't be doing anything. Anything else? Is there any point in advertising in the US if you're not licensed to do business there in Canada? We have American clients. We have American clients from 40 something states. There's only a small list of states where we cannot do business. We've been servicing clients since we operated or opened up the exchange. And yes, it makes sense to advertise in the US as long as we're compliant in how we advertise. We don't do any direct solicitation, etc. Answer to that question is a resounding yes, Stephen. Casey Nash, they say millennials are 3 times more likely to invest in crypto. They will also be hardest hit with unemployment numbers. Do you think a lot of people will pull money out of crypto to pay bills? They say, I love what they, who's they? And we should have started with the show here quickly, guys, but I'll finish this last question. Millennials are more likely because they're just younger. Younger people are always, should be the ones taking the most risk because they can take the risk. You can't take the same risks when you're 65 that you can take when you're 25. Because if you lose everything at 25, you have time to rebuild. If you lose everything at 65, you have much less time to rebuild. Or no time, basically. So yes, there will be people that pull money out of crypto, but understand that this is a zero-sum game, guys. Everybody that sells, someone else has to be buying. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean if this guy wants to sell here, that's where somebody's buying. Maybe somebody's buying down here. That's why price falls. But for everybody that sells, there's someone else on the other side buying. There's always active interest in the market. Price point is meaningless when you talk about volumes and even adoption. Price point should almost never correlate directly to adoption, to be quite honest. Now, you can argue that the more people that buy, the more buying pressure is, the higher the price can go. Sure. But if you have an equal amount of sellers as adoption rises, meaning your market's getting more mature because you're getting almost equal amounts of buyers and sellers, then price doesn't necessarily need to go up. Until the SEC catches on, solicitation through SpongeBob means is the best approach. Well, the SEC would have nothing to do here because that's the Securities Exchange Commission. We don't deal in securities. So SpongeBob memes all the way, and the SEC has nothing to say. In the US, you're talking about money service business registration. We are registered with FinCEN. We do not have any offices in the US, nor do we directly solicit any direct states in the US, nor do we have a presence in any state in the US. Thus, state MSB licenses aren't necessarily needed. There are certain states where it is required. In those states, we don't do business. Simple as that. What is your expectation for marketing? Okay, let me move into the show, guys, then we'll get back to the questions. If not, then we'll just have no show, which maybe that's what people want. I don't know. We'll have to take a poll on that in the show to figure out what people want in the show. But let's get on to the actual work at hand here. And work at hand, Jesus Christ. It's Friday, They give me the benefit of the doubt on that one. Let's jump on to market news. So my name is Kevin Murcko. For those of you who've never been here before, I am the CEO here at CoinMetro. This is This Week in Crypto. We combine that with an Ask Me Anything, right? Which is basically a time when you can ask me anything. We have an agenda that we follow. First thing on the agenda is market news. I have 10 pieces of market news curated by our elite Telegram group. Thank you guys and gals for that. I go over each one. I make a comment, usually about a minute each. If it talks about Binance, it may take me 2 or 3 minutes, maybe a bit more. I get a bit triggered. Then we go into the second little piece on our agenda, which is Kevin Explains Crypto. I take a term or a phrase that usually relates to crypto, hopefully, and I explain what it means. Then we get the live Q&A right here on YouTube, right over here to my, I guess, right or left, depending on how you or I are looking at the screen. And I answer the questions. I've already answered some of them today. And then Reddit questions. We also curate some Reddit questions over the past week. We have 1 or 2 or 3 hanging around this week. So I'll get to those as well if time permits. So let's jump into the news. And we'll go from there. Number 1 on a list of 10, guys, STO platforms registration with traditional bank helps move security tokens forward. All right, I'm pretty sure I already read this news, but I'm going to read it just so I can get a little backdrop here. Well, I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to skim through it. BlockPulse has obtained registration with ACPR Bank of France. Okay, initial coin offerings. Okay, STOs on there. Okay, have not seen such boom. Blah, 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 specific capabilities concerning the euro. The registration allows BlockPulse to manage euro payment for financial instruments. Okay, so basically what you have is a primary issuance platform. Primary issuance meaning you have an issuer, someone who needs to raise some money. They issue into, not into a more than likely, not into what you call a matching engine, but into what you call a billboard. They issue, people come in and make offers, they fill the offers. And the bank is going to let them accept euro. So the bank is going to basically custodial the euro payments rather than them having to get bank accounts themselves. So yeah, like most things in crypto and fintech, the first steps are always a bit lazy. This is a bit lazy. It's still only a primary issuance platform. It probably still is focused mostly on the country in which they're based. Yes, in the future, we aim to expand the European Union through Benelux and Spain. So it's France only. It's regional, it's siloed, just like the traditional market. I've mentioned this many times on the show. There's no reason to get into blockchain, into DLT, into whatever in terms of capital markets, especially in terms of infrastructure. If you're not going cross-border and you're not doing it in real time, you're not really solving any pain points. You're just making news headlines like this one. Okay, so moving on. Number 2 on a list of 10, MoneyGram says it has sold $11,300,000 US dollars of XRP since beginning its partnership with Ripple. So obviously they had some Ripple to sell. Those of you who don't know, Ripple partnered. Oh, give me 1 second, guys. Sorry about that. Give me a second. I think I probably had a call scheduled in the middle of this AMA. That's what happens when everybody's working from home. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So MoneyGram, sorry about that, guys. That's what happens. Everybody's schedule, everything gets scheduled now over Zoom or over calls, and I end up getting people rescheduling things that they can't attend, other parties on the call, and then it gets rescheduled into my schedule, which I can't change. So anyway, even under the ocean. Okay, sorry, a little bit of distraction there. So let's get back to this MoneyGram. So those who don't know, MoneyGram partnered with, or XRP partnered with MoneyGram. I don't know who initiated. I think MoneyGram actually initiated the partnership, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And part of that deal was cash, and I believe the other part was XRP. So they are now starting to sell some of that XRP. I guess maybe they were holding on to it, expecting it to rise. As it started to fall, well, maybe they started selling a bit of it to make sure they had some cash. Doesn't really say much other than the fact that they're smart, right? You don't want to hold on to an asset that may or may not continue to lose value. So doesn't say much for the partnership, I think. Ripple does have a few pieces in their infrastructure, XRapid, et cetera, that definitely are probably saving MoneyGram some money and increasing their ability to get into certain markets. So yeah, I think the partnership, not a bad one. And they're selling an asset that they probably heard from somebody might go to zero or something. And that just kind of makes sense, taking some risk off the table. Number 3 on the list of 10, flight to quality. Investors seek shelter in US dollars and Bitcoin. Well, I would definitely say investors are seeking shelter in US dollars. The flight to USD happens and has happened in every modern day financial crisis. Actually, JPY, the Japanese yen, used to be 30 years, we're talking about 30 or more than 30 years ago, and also the Swiss franc were a place where people would fly to when there was some type of uncertainty around the world. However, after the Swiss franc debacle in 2015, with depegging the Swiss franc to the euro, and also the fact that the Japanese have been on basically zero interest rates for 30 years or close to it, they simply aren't the first place people go. It's the US dollar. So even though every cycle, every 1 to 10 years, there is a cycle of the US dollar is going to crumble because of this, that, or the other. And every 1 to 10 years, people are wrong. And here we've shown this is the first crisis, global crisis we have seen in any one of our lives. I don't care how old you are. If you're a living person right now, even if you look into the Great Depression, even if you look into World War II, you still didn't have a macrochasm that basically affects the entire world. And it affects the entire world in a very similar light when it comes to the economy. That is amazing. We've never seen it before. And still, the flight was to USD. Now, the article here talks about Bitcoin. I don't know where they come up with that argument. I mean, you can say, yeah, Bitcoin hit a floor and bounced back up, but those very well could have been a massive orders that have been sitting there for a year and a half. I don't think it was so much induced buying just from current buying. I think those were probably many of them, maybe not a majority, but definitely a large minority, were probably orders that were sitting in books all over the place that were getting filled on the way down, just like stops were getting hit on the way down. So far, I don't think Bitcoin has proven what it is yet. And I've said that before, and anybody that said it's a store of value, I think right now is also somewhat proven incorrect. Now, you can make the argument that it bounced from the bottom. That's great. But if you don't compare it to gold, compare it to the US, compare it to a fiat currency, compare it to the USD. And USD is definitely showing that it's more of a store of value in times of crisis, right? And one of the biggest, and I'm not saying a store of value over time, now somebody's going to come out and probably post this stupid chart from like 1901 till now when $1 is now worth 8 cents. Now, again, just like reading a chart or 30 cents or whatever it is, just like reading a chart, I can give you those same statistics in another light and make you see that the dollars actually retain buying power. So everybody that there's many ways to come and look at these type of things. In reality, the dollar has lost some buying power, but at the same time, when you talk about inflation and different things, and if I look in terms of times of crisis, the dollar always wins out, and it's won out this time as well. Number 4, report about 11% of Indonesians own some form of cryptocurrency. Well, there's a lot of Indonesians, so that's good. I'd like to know why that is. Not necessarily why that is, but how that is. Did they buy it? Was it airdropped? Did they own some type of crypto asset that was given to them for free? Or did they actually go out and purchase this? And did they actually have access to it? Did they use it? Or did they just receive it? Know they received it, don't even know how to use it, don't know what it is, and don't even know how to log into how to look at the address to find out how much they have. Because that's probably a little bit more interesting statistic than just how many people own it. But it definitely is large. It's probably one of the largest in the world. Yeah, it's interesting, but I don't think it sheds too much light on worldwide adoption per se. Number 5 in the list of 10, Fed's unlimited QE places spotlight on Bitcoin store of value narrative. Yeah, well, the unlimited QE is definitely unprecedented, that's for sure. One of the biggest things there is the fact that fractional reserve banking, which basically allows a bank to loan out 100 times more than what they have on deposit, now lets them loan out unlimited amounts of money with having no reserve. That's amazing. That means the bank can literally have zero money in their coffers and loan out infinity money, and then charge interest on that money. The risk associated with that is mind-boggling. The longer this little Corona thing keeps itself around, and the longer they allow banks to do that. Because if this crisis continues for months and banks are over leveraging on loans because they're being forced to, and then the government is underwriting loans to small businesses in order to try and boost the economy, and the economy stays shut down for months on end, and those small businesses then are now closing and going into bankruptcy, and now the governments are actually underwriting all these loans, which they now have to repay. I mean, now many governments, like the US, ones that have their own currencies, can just, print money into oblivion. But, one thing we haven't talked about here, what about countries that don't have their own currency or don't have their own monetary policies, where they're simply pegging their value to another currency that they hold in reserve? What happens to those guys? They can't print money. They can't just go and press a button, right? What happens when they run out of money? They can't just give money to all their citizens. They don't have it. So what do? Interesting. Sorry about that. Sorry about somebody said they needed some hopium. That definitely wasn't hopium. But anyway, moving on. Number 6 on the list of 10, Telegram loses big against SEC on cryptocurrency case. Is Kik and Hedra next? Well, when this came out, I told you they were going to lose. Open and shut case, they lose. But Telegram knew that the case was going to come, And they strategically waited to link Telegram to the underlying issuer of the Gram token so that they could delay the release because they weren't ready. So they're actually used it to their advantage initially, but I'm pretty sure they knew they were going to lose. And what they're betting on is that they will only have to return the money to US guys and maybe pay a bit of a fine. But because of the size of the raise overall, it shouldn't hurt them so much. Kick and Hedger, on the other hand, definitely Kick, on the other hand, is a different story. Kick is definitely open and shut as well. I don't remember the Hedger case off the top of my head, but the precedence from the Telegram case is definitely going to help the SEC and not help everybody else. Number 7 on a list of 10, Bitcoin mining difficulty posts second biggest percentage drop in history. Yeah, well, people see prices drop and, well, they start to move out. The halving coming up is also going to make it difficult for non-institutional miners that aren't in a place where electricity electricity costs are capped. I think the majority of costs, China, where most of the mining is, et cetera, are roughly around $3,000 to mine a Bitcoin. That means it's going to cost them roughly $6,000, meaning at current prices, they're still a little bit profitable. So they probably will maintain operations, at least for the most part. But many small miners and miners outside of countries where it costs more to pay more than $3,000 to $4,000 to mine a Bitcoin are going to have big problems come the halving. And they may already have started to shut down parts of their operation so that their operational costs don't exceed the cost or the value of each Bitcoin. So we'll have to see. I do expect that to probably continue to level down, though at some point it will level out and will start to level back up. That's for sure. Miners will come back in. They simply won't be those institutional miners. They will be miners that don't understand math. Number 8 on the list of 10, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro accused of using cryptocurrency for drug trafficking. Of course he does. Number 9 on the list of 10, Square gets approval to launch bank in 2021. Yep, that was fairly kind of understood that Square was going to get that. Jack Dorsey, Square, Twitter, etc. They've been running Square as a payment institution, money service business for years. I'm sure their books are nice and clean. They do a resounding amount of volume. It made sense they were going to get a banking license, and they did. It remains to be seen how they separate themselves from a normal bank. You know, it always makes, you know, all these challenger banks end up achieving banking licenses. In reality, you would hope that these challenger banks would actually change the definition of what is a bank, and then maybe wouldn't need a banking license and be able to provide services like a bank without getting the license that allows them to do the things people hate them for, like fractional reserve banking. So interesting. We'll see how they really need to separate themselves, right? We'll have to see how they do that. And if they don't, are they really making any change, right? Do challenger banks challenge anything? That's a question, and I would say they don't. Number 10 on the list of 10, cryptocurrency is a failure as a currency, says Brazil's banking chief. And for the most part, Brazil's banking chief is 100% correct. Bitcoin does not, cryptocurrency, he's obviously, first of all, he's saying all crypto is currency and then it's failed. And if that's the case, we definitely have failed. We don't have a cryptocurrency in my mind. We have crypto assets. Some of them try to act as currencies, and they don't do a very good job at it if you compare it to any other standard currency. Compare it to Euro, USD, or pound. You know, if I'm in the UK and I have pounds, well, I can pretty much spend them anywhere. If I'm almost anywhere in the world and I have US dollars, I can pretty much spend them anywhere. If I'm anywhere in Europe, I can pretty much use euros. But if you compare to the US dollar, which you can pretty much spend almost anywhere in the world, and it will be accepted for the most part, at the very minimum at exchange, but at an exchange house. But definitely if you're in a tourist area, most of those guys, except maybe in the UK, to be honest, will take US dollars. If you compare that to Bitcoin, which is the most liquid crypto asset, that's not the case. If you compare the transaction times, the amount of transactions that can happen per second, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the learning curve to be able to use it, the amount of people that actually use it, the amount of people that will accept it, the volatility, all these things come into play. And well, I would say he's probably correct. I do think there are some smaller projects that have created things like stable coins, which you could argue fit the definition of a currency pretty well. So yeah, overall though, I think he's pretty accurate on that. He's accurate now. Will he be accurate 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 1 year from now? Maybe not. And I think that's where most skeptics hit a wall. That's where your Nouriel Rubinis hit a wall. When you can only see what's directly in front of you and you don't have the vision to see what's coming, then nothing would ever work. you would never advance. You would never make anything new, better, greater, etc., because you just say, well, this doesn't work, and never continue. So I think he shares a little bit of that same reserve, or he builds his own walls and can't climb over them. But as of today, I couldn't argue with it. All right, so let's run into Kevin Explains Crypto. So this one actually, I guess, is more, well, it's definitely crypto related. Anyway, this week's Kevin Explains Crypto term is Murcko tree. So Murcko trees. So where should I start with the Murcko tree? Because there's a lot to wrap into hopefully what'll be around a minute here. But Murcko trees have been with us for, Jesus, roughly 40 years, maybe, I guess. 41 years, I think, exactly. 1979, I think, is the date. Ralph Murcko is the one who came up with this nice cryptography revolution called the Murcko tree, obviously named after him. A Murcko tree is a very, when you compare it, let's say, to some more modern cryptography techniques, it's simplistic, but most widely used blockchains today use Murcko tree as part of their cryptographic tool set, right? What a Murcko tree is, it's called a tree because basically over time it forms what looks like a tree. You basically have a root hash, a beginning hash, a beginning, let's say you start at 0, right? You have your 0 hash where you start, and then basically you build a tree. Off of that root hash, you are not storing actual let's say information. You are basically taking information and you're linking that information outside of the chain, so to speak, outside of the tree. So you have a document that sits here, let's say. You are creating a hash based on that document, and that hash is being stored in a branch of the tree. Anything that has to do with that hash over time creates more leaves, more nodes, more leaves on that branch, and every new piece of information that's stored on the tree has its own branch building off of the tree. And basically what happens is if that document is altered, then the document will be flagged as being altered in the tree because the hash says what the state of the document was at the time the hash was created. And if the state of the document changes, well, then we know. So then it's known because, well, the hashes don't match, right? So at the end of the day, the Murcko tree allows you to do things that most blockchain, well, all blockchains do, to be honest. Murcko tree is part of the Bitcoin blockchain, it's part of the Ethereum blockchain. It's a piece. Like I said, I don't know. I don't know every blockchain that it's a part of. I haven't done the research, to be quite honest. Murcko trees are used for the CSD, for example, to make our data immutable inside of a virtual layer without creating a block time that wouldn't support real-time settlement. So Murcko trees can move very fast. You can write hashes to a Murcko tree much faster than you can write, let's say, something to the Ethereum blockchain, for example. So yeah, good old Ralph Murcko, 1979, Murcko tree, very simplistic form of immutability using cryptography technology, which became the base for many newer forms of cryptography, including blockchain. Okay, moving on to live Q&A. I'm going to check Reddit real quick here. Yeah, we have actually one question. Well, maybe a couple questions from one guy. I'm just going to go over them real quick, guys. If I have learned anything about my way of learning and improving, it is that I best do with hands-on and visual aids that track my progress. Will you be adding either into dashboard or septum screen better tracking of our account performance, profit to loss, trade long, trade short, and more that I can't think of right now? I would like CoinMetro to really stand out, better overall exchange to maximum functionality as possible, really stand out. Thank you for helping me with a better future. I see a comment that was posted here by our team that simply says this was a post in Telegram beta demo feedback channel, where Oliver, and I guess Oliver had shared a mock-up which shows part of the new dashboard that shows position balance increase over time, etc. So to answer your question, K Savage 79, yes, I have the same goal, though we have to, it's at some point you need to balance a goal of being, let's say, the platform for newbies and helping people get to the stage where they can trade, and creating a dashboard that provides them with so much data they get overwhelmed. I agree with you that that type of data is great for traders. it's not so great for layman's. Well, it is great for them. It just may not be great for them initially because it's information overload. I do think, though, that over time, that dashboard is going to grow, expand, and become something where that type of information will be available when someone wants to see it. And I agree with you. And it's something we've discussed in here internally. And I'm glad this was posted in demo feedback. That means the guys are already digesting it, and it's already been mentioned internally. So having people externally mention the same thing obviously helps us. The new dashboard will have much more data at your fingertips than you currently have. That's for sure. I think even in certain aspects, the dashboard we have now, aside from all the colors and, kind of looks a bit like a kindergarten bulletin board. But if you look at the data that's available, some data maybe not as important, but there's definitely more data available there, more things that someone can do than there are many other platforms. The new dashboard is going to simplify that. It's going to simplify the color scheme. It's going to simplify the visuals and focus in on having more and more ways to analyze data. So it's already moving in the right direction. Weren't you supposed to have a meeting with the SEC this month? Yep. We are still. So in one case, it's easier to get in touch with the SEC. Obviously, there's not going to be no personal meetings, no flying over to meet the SEC this month or probably next month or the month after that, unfortunately. We're trying to set up conference calls, but now everybody's setting up conference calls, which has led to the SEC responding quicker to have meetings, but also led to them having more meetings. Anyway, we're still in touch with our law firm. We actually, my partner is probably on a call with them right now, actually, which is what got rescheduled, and I wasn't going to be able to attend. So I will get a feedback from him to see where we stand on that. But we're still looking to talk with them. It's just not going to happen probably in March, unfortunately. How many new active users do you expect to onboard by the end of the year? Realistically, I think let's assume we start really actively marketing some A and B tested campaigns and copy in May. Let's say May 1st. Let's just put a date. I'm not saying that's when we're going to start. I would hope we do it before that. And it looks like we will do it before that. But let's just to make my math easier and my explanation easier, let's say we start in May, right? That gives us the month of May and an additional roughly 6 months. Well, not roughly, basically it gives us 7 months worth of time. You have to imagine that the first 2 to 3 months will be a ramp up. And then eventually the content and the advertising we create will help us carry through after 3 months. SEO and other fine tunings that will start happening as well will also take 3 to 6 months, which means we'll start to see probably a bell curve that really starts to get to the top of the bell, probably going into the end of the summer, starting towards the end of the summer and getting to that top of that curve towards the end of the year. So I would say realistically, to put it, I think we can see 15 to 20,000. It would be a good expectation. Now, I had mentioned 70,000 before, that to get to self-sustainability. That is based on numbers that we calculated up until recently. But for the most part, most of those numbers were calculated before we had, let's say, margin trading, before we introduced more traders to margin trading, and definitely before we introduced the reward system, and definitely before because we haven't done it yet, where we will introduce IBANs, pounds, euros, etc. So expanding on what we make per client per month, even those 20,000 could potentially get us close or even above self-sustainability, depending on how we monetize each of those clients. So I think 15 to 20K is a good place to hit by the end of the year. And I'm not, just so you know, I'm not revising down the 70,000. That 70,000 wasn't generally a overshoot, but it was based on what we needed to achieve to get self-sustainability. But running back through the numbers, like I said, I think we can do it with 20,000 with some new product launches. How's your cooperation with Quant going? Oliver's the one that really, and I'm actually going to jump in probably and start talking to Quant on behalf of Ignium, our CSD, in the coming weeks. But Oliver's been the guy that's been back and forth with Quant. He has the more of a relationship than I do. It's going well. We've been waiting to get this marketing thing kicked off. I think there's been a bit back and forth there. There's maybe a few things that are pending here or there. I think we're waiting for them to come back to us, in fact. But overall, well, it was established, we agreed on something, and now it's just a matter of pushing it forward. Did you submit your PSP license? No, we actually paused the PSP license for the main reason. So we got most of the documentation ready. There's a few things that aren't ready, but most of the internal policies, most of the hard groundwork has been done. We paused mainly we paused actually before the main outbreak of the virus. And that generally didn't have so much to do with the reason we paused, but I'm glad we did, because considering the fact that the times it takes to actually get a response are probably going to increase, we may have ended up spending even more money or extending our timelines. What we did instead was we started to reach out to other providers that can umbrella us so we can offer the same services without acquiring the license initially. And the money we spent so far to put together all the documentation isn't wasted, because we need the same documentation to basically do those type of arrangements with other players in the, let's say, payments market. So that is on, and that's going to get us to market much quicker than the license would have. And that's why we paused. But I think it's, realistically speaking, before the beginning of the summer, we are on track as of now, depending on how it works out with these third parties, to be able to have cards, virtual IBANs, pounds, euros. Yeah, so that's what we're working towards. And that's the main things we wanted to launch with that payment service license. That also means more than likely payments between individuals on the platform as well. Third-party payments outside of the platform, not using the card, still mapping out how that would work. But it may very well may be a possibility as well. What kind of marketing are we planning? Different types of marketing. Definitely digital is a focus. I think it has to be. We're also looking at some, out of the box things. We had our, we used to have here this airport gate. We're looking at other ways to possibly do similar types of traditional or physical media. We don't have, I can't say, we did have a conversation with a few things, like for instance, car wrapping businesses that wrap cars, wrap taxis, wrap Ubers, etc. In high traffic areas, like, well, not high traffic right now, but let's say London, and other cities around Europe. We think that could potentially be interesting. And other things, that kind of in that same light, perhaps, podcasts, doing some influencer marketing as well, which is also digital. Some print media could also be part of the package. So a mix, but mostly focused on digital, that's for sure. Any feedback why Digital Sandbox you mentioned last week? So they came back to me and basically said that they'd be interested to hear a bit more. I have to send them an email, which I'll probably get to them over this weekend. I haven't had time to get to it. They just want a little more information on exactly what we're doing, basically a 1 or 2, 3-page document that explains what CoinMetro and Ignium will do inside that sandbox. Their sandbox was created essentially for exchanges doing fiat to crypto with Bitcoin. I mean, that's essentially what the sandbox was for. I'm trying to show them that we could potentially do something much more interesting in that sandbox. The question comes that for trading of securities, settlement of securities, trading of securities, and CoinMetro settling through Ignium, that's probably not possible nationwide in the US, because state law would get trumped by the SEC for securities. So we would need no action relief from the SEC regardless. But there may be a way to do a smaller test just on a statewide level, which might not drum up so much business, but it would give us a US test, which wouldn't be a bad thing when we do go for no action relief for the SEC. So we want to see what happens there. I have to send them more information. I will do that more than likely over the weekend, and I would expect they've been responding quite quickly. So next week we should probably have some feedback. No, I didn't say marketing in May. Marketing will start in April, but that doesn't mean we're going to go from 0 to 1,000 in one day, right? Marketing requires to make multiple sets of copy, push those out there on digital platforms, see what the click rates are, see what the conversion rates are, adjust landing pages, that takes a bit of time. Real marketing push, okay, now let's spend some money behind this, obviously needs to happen after all that testing. We will be spending money and we will be pushing ads out in April. May was just me not having to go, well, if we start on April 12th, that gives us, 7 months and 22 days. I didn't want to have to do that math. So there you go. Any new VCs or angel investors willing to invest in CM? We haven't started officially going out and doing that. We have to revamp pitch decks. We have to do a few things to get that process started. That process will start probably towards the end of April. And I do think VC is going to be difficult, guys. We haven't got VC money yet. Ignium, I think VC money would be a bit easier. But in this climate, it's going to be more difficult than it was a few months ago. But in terms of CoinMetro, VC is going to be tough, guys. It's going to be tough in this climate for sure. Angel investor money won't be as tough, and might actually be easier if they're out there really hunting for alternatives. So these are angels that may have been investing in other industries and never invested in fintech, and now realize that fintech is one thing that may not see so much damage during these types of crises, and now may be looking to diversify. Any new trams coming? I have no information on that whatsoever. What I would say to our community is, guys, if you're trading, open a tram. Worst case scenario is that you have a private tram that sucks, and you're doing the same trading you would have done on your own account. Do it on a private tram. If you end up making money, then you can get that thing put public and trade some more money and make some more money. So yeah, as far as the algo guys, again, Oliver was spearheading that towards 1 or 2 algo providers. And I think one of the guys just kind of stopped responding to us. And on the other side, I think they were responsive, but I don't know if it was an API issue. I don't remember if they were waiting for us to make some changes to our own API, or they requested changes. But there was some type of holdup there. Definitely one of the things that we're going to start doing with marketing is B2B marketing to a certain extent, and that's going to be to find traders for Tram. So that's going to be part of the rollout. How is the refactoring the back end going? Ongoing. So most of the refactoring on that front end is pretty much done. The dashboard's now the main focus. We had a deadline to get the dashboard up, at least a clickable mock-up version inside of our sandbox by the end of the month. So those guys are working hard to try and get that deadline done. Once the dashboard's rolled out, that's gonna part of that is streamlining that we've of KYC and onboarding process, which we've done to a certain extent and already rolled out today. The other side of that is deposit and withdrawal functionality. Part of that is on my shoulders, getting on new options for deposit and withdrawal, and we've already started to get some approvals back and forth between these providers. So we're starting to look at APIs, etc. When can I start filling my wardrobe with CM swag? So yeah, back and forth with the t-shirt designer. Where I'm looking at doing some stickers, probably some patches, more than likely some other, your basic swag, and that stuff. I think sometime in the summer, you guys will have your first chance to get your hands on some stuff for sure. Parsec market trades. Did they mention any marketing drives? Parsec market trades. Correct me if I thought market orders were already. I know they had requested us. I know they requested us to lift a few things. Maybe they didn't request market orders actually, but I thought we were having market orders already on PRQ. Correct me if I'm wrong. If not, then I'll come back to you on that one. Marketing drives. I know that they're involved in a few different partnerships right now where they're helping out different blockchains with a few things. As far as marketing drives on their side, haven't had a discussion with their CEO about that in recent times. I think right now they're focused on partnerships for the most part to drive their marketing. Are we any closer to increasing leverage on the platform? Yep, we're always getting closer. Discussions internally have all been positive. Now it's about we want to get one new liquidity provider who we just got onboarded into the mix. That's probably going to take another 2 weeks. Getting that liquidity provider in will give us some cross-margin capabilities, which will allow us to better manage liquidity across multiple assets, and that'll give us that'll reduce our risk in terms of negative balances on negative balances or negative balance possibilities on the platform, and that'll allow us to increase that margin. So you can see my daughter out there. And hold on one second. Here, come here. Let me see. I have to check homework now. So this is say hi, Nielsa. Okay, so let's see. Cool. So what is this? It's just about the links again? No. It's a kitten. Is it a story?
Yes.
Cool.
That I read.
Very cool. I like it. Take a picture of it. Homeschooling, guys. Awesome. All right. Should I take this live on the air? Let's see. Let's see who this is. Prank caller live on the air. Look at that. So are you any closer to, okay, so leverage, we already talked about. What do you think about Binance debit cards in the works? Well, I think I know who's issuing them. I knew they were going to be issued actually prior to them being issued. There'll be another large B company issuing a card here in the very near future. What it tells me is that the secondary card issuers are getting less and less risk adverse towards crypto. What it also tells me is that Binance, while they probably, in order to make this work, essentially had to create secondary funding platforms for them to move their own company funds in order to make them client funds. They aren't announcing, ledger accounts or IBAN accounts for their clients, which means they're taking they're basically having to use a float of corporate funds in fiat to fund the cards, which tells me that the company that's issuing those cards is not so risk adverse to their business model. It also tells me they may run into some issues, because doing that can cause definitely some regulatory issues for the underwriter of that card, mainly because they're using company money as a float, which at some point becomes customer funds without having the licensing to do that. The company that's umbrellaing them does, but then that links them to the risk associated with those Binance corporate funds. So anyway, what it tells me is generally good, in the fact that Visa themselves is still very risk adverse to crypto. That's why when you look at any cards provided by companies that deal in crypto, even indirectly, Revolut, for example, there's only a small icon in the corner and no real design elements to the card whatsoever. And that's because they can't say the word crypto. If they had the Binance logo that said Binance, it wouldn't be accepted by Visa to print. So it tells me that the secondary issuers, though, are starting to get a little less stringent. That's good. But Visa is still very stringent. And it remains to be seen. I've seen very big players in FX get their cards shut down overnight. I'm not saying that'll happen with the Binance card. But yeah, we'll see. But overall, I think for the industry, it's a good thing. We'll have to see how this particular one plays out, though. Does your daughter take lessons in Estonian or English? She's in international school, so English lessons. She has Estonian, I think, once or twice a week. She also takes Russian classes 3 times a week. But the main classes are all in English. She also speaks Spanish, so she'll be maybe at one point a polyglot, but I think she'll at least be speaking 3 languages, more than likely Russian, Spanish, and English. Speaking of IBAN accounts, do you have any news on that? Yep, those are all in the works. We had a call today, actually, with one provider that we've been onboarded with, just going over final risk classifications. But yeah, that's one thing it's one of my main focuses, actually, on the list right now. Personal questions, but where do you hold most of your own wealth? Equities, bonds, cash? Any tips for others? So I have a very diverse portfolio. A good portion of my wealth is in cash, in different cash, both in, I guess, US dollars, euros, Mexican pesos, because I own businesses in all those countries. And a lot of my money sits in cash accounts of those businesses. I also have investments. I don't really have any exposure to equities. I have some indirect exposure to equities, but almost no direct exposure. I do hold some crypto, that's for sure. So I have exposure to crypto. Bonds, I've bought and sold bonds over the last maybe 10 years. Currently don't have any exposure to the debt market. And that's not because I pulled everything out because I saw what was going to happen with Corona. But roughly 2015, I started to scale back on all the investments I had made after 2008 crash into equities and bonds. Most of my investments are either in myself or in businesses that I have direct or indirect exposure into. I like to be able to control what happens with my money, or at least have the vision in my head that I have some control over it. I do have some real estate, though I'm not a big fan of real estate. Most of the real estate I have, I use, so it's for personal use. I'm not in the rental market. I don't go into the speculative flipping real estate market either, because it's just not as risk-free as most people tend to think it is. So yeah, I think, diversification is key, guys. That's all. That's really what I can say. There are definitely types of instruments. It's very difficult to be a hodler in any market. For me, I generally like to be a bit more active. But if you're going to hodl things or hold things, you miss out on lots of opportunities. Like now, for example, there are opportunities now, and there will be a myriad of opportunities of companies that have just crashed, burned to the bottom, where you can get in and see really good returns till the next crisis. Maybe, you might be unfortunate, and the next crisis might be next year with, COVID-20. I don't know. But generally speaking, all crises create mega opportunities. You just need to be quick enough to act, and you need to know how to take on risk. But yeah, most of the assets I hold tie directly into businesses that I own or have direct or indirect exposure to. Well, running up on 56 minutes. Any other questions, please feel free. Shoot them out while you're doing that. I'll take a quick check here. Got a bunch of emails that flowed in while I've been on. See if we got anything interesting. All right, another call. Lots of calls getting scheduled. I like this. All right, lots of movement happening. It's always good to see movement. When do you think about the 5 coins to 5 million? What do you think about the 5 coins to 5 million by Tika on London Real? I'm going to need some information on what that actually is, to be honest. Maybe I missed this one, Smith & Wesson. Any new marketing hires? We got someone in touch with us for senior content, who we've been trying to kind of cater, trying to get on board, and she got back in touch with us. So I'm not sure where exactly we stand, but I think more than likely we are going to have some type of probably a new content provider in the near future. So 5 coins, a special cryptocurrency investment event. All right, let's see. Wall Street trader turned cryptocurrency cannabis industry expert. Jesus Christ. At age 16, moved to London. Okay, 150,000 in his pocket. Great. He later went on to launch the hedge fund. Today, he shows everyday investors how to grow their wealth safely through a range of financial newsletters. All right, so I'm assuming, sorry, I didn't know the show. That's why I didn't know London Real was a show. So the guy's gonna take five specific tokens, I guess, and trade his account up to 5 million. I guess that's his goal. Highly speculative. I think most of those things are garbage. I'm not saying you can't do it. Lots of guys in trading have a rags to riches story. I mean, I even almost have a rags to riches story. I was homeless in Mexico, for Christ's sake, before I launched FX Pig. And the only reason those things tend to come out, and the only reason those things tend to happen, is ambitious people that get stuck in crisis tend to work better in crisis. And they get more ambitious, they don't take no for an answer, and they move. And anybody with that same level of ambitiousness and unwillingness to fail will succeed. Failure, success in life is not about where you went to school, how smart you are, the color of your skin, whether you're male or female, or whatever the 195,000 genders we now have, or whatever it is. None of that stuff matters. It does not matter. In fact, people that have it in them to be successful, the ones that can take no for an answer, take a lot of shit, and all it does is propel them towards success, probably do better when they're faced with adversity. So if they're, the more adverse the situation, the better that it probably ends up for them in the end. And that's not to say that you're white, college educated, was born with a golden spoon in his mouth, still can't be successful. I'm sure they can. But I've heard many of these stories. So that story is kind of meaningless to me. The guy's done it before. Can he do it again? Sure. Could he fail? Absolutely. These are highly speculative. These are basically pink sheets. These are micro cap, very small assets that have the ability to move fast in one direction, whether it's up or down. Interesting to see what happens. I guess from a perspective, I would not advise anyone that doesn't have the risk tolerance or the money to lose to take speculative bets on micro caps of large value that could affect their life. You know, I say buy XAM at the end of every show this week, and I do it. You know, obviously, look, I market a product. That's my product. That's great. But I slightly do it in jest in the fact that, look, I love people to buy XCM, but I would never advise someone to second mortgage their home and throw it into XCM or any other micro cap, whether it's a stock, whether it's a micro stock, whether it's a micro token, if you can't afford to lose that money, because that's always a possibility, right? It always is, no matter who markets what to you. If coronavirus lasts a year, nothing will be left. Let's put it that way. There can always be black swan events. You know, so look, guys, I don't know the guy Tika. Wouldn't know him if I saw him on the street. All I'd have to say is for entertainment value, fucking great. But, you know, nothing more than that. Are ETFs one way to watch after the bubble? So ETFs were born kind of after and amidst crises. ETFs are a way of diversifying, that's for sure. But many ETFs, you look at spider ETFs as a way to get really, really micro diversified, where you can diversify into one specific subset of the economy. Like, or, you know, there's probably spider ETFs right now for like work at home apps, you know, which is great. But ETFs are also micro diversification for the most part. You can diversify usually into one industry, one whatever. So they might not, they're very good if you pick the right industry or the right micro economy to diversify in. Tika reckons BTC will be 300K in about 6 years. I see no reason to believe that. So, I mean, he could be right and he could be wrong. I would say the probability of him being wrong far exceeds the probability of him being right, but he still could be right. I mean, people pulling numbers out of their head are just, I don't know, they're looking at, for the most part, these are technical guys. They're looking at a chart that went from, you know, 300 to 20,000. They extrapolate a number and go, whoa, it's going to go from 3 to 300K. That's not even the right extrapolated number, to be honest. But regardless, that's the wrong way to look at an immature asset. You can't look at the past. For even a mature asset, never look at the past and predict the future. It's stupid. Look at the present to predict, hopefully, the present in you know, the very short-term future. Don't look at the past to predict the future, even the future in 10 minutes. It doesn't make any sense, and that's what most people do, unfortunately. But in terms of, you know, predictions, everybody can take a number out of the hat. Somebody's going to be right. That doesn't mean they actually knew what they were talking about when they made the prediction. I don't see any reason to think that the market cap for Bitcoin has the ability to scale by that much. But I could be wrong too. But then again, so am I for bag holding XCM for 2.5 years. Well, Bjorn, I don't know if that makes you an idiot. If you were expecting, you know, 10,000x. I can't say it makes you an idiot. I don't think it makes you an idiot for holding on to anything, as long as if you were to lose everything you're holding on to, it wouldn't mean a drastic change in your life. And if you've been holding on to it for 2 years, your life obviously probably hasn't drastically changed. So that doesn't make you an idiot. It actually makes you a smart investor. And I'm not saying that, or smart trader. And I'm not saying that because you put your money in XCM. You could have told me, I put my XCM, Jesus. I put my money into, you know, I don't know, some company that makes flip-flops in Brazil, and the price fell and hasn't come back up in 2 years, but you're still living the same life. That means that you didn't invest more than you could afford to, which means you're actually a smart trader. You need to bring Oliver in the weekly. He can join in audio only. I need to. All right. Well, I'll tell. Well, I've asked Oliver a few times to join, and he's declined my offer. So if you guys can get him to join, I'll bring him in. No problem. he can bring some updates and answer some questions. Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, theoretically, I could probably make sure I time these AMAs with my own weekly, biweekly, or multiple weekly briefings. And I do have updates, but I like to keep. Look, I think having people go to Telegram and ask questions is not a bad thing. First of all, it keeps Telegram lively. Many people are on Telegram that aren't here, which means that when someone goes and asks Oliver something on Telegram and Oliver comes and answers, more people see it than they see it here. Doesn't mean that I can't answer it. I could update pretty much everything that's going on, but I'd be updating it to a limited amount of people versus the amount of people that'll see it on Telegram. So that's why I do it that way. Fergus Khan, do you follow any of crypto project CEOs, i.e. do you follow any of the crypto project CEOs? Not really, no. That doesn't mean, look, when there's news stories, I read them, but I don't necessarily follow any specific CEOs. And that's not because I don't think they're doing something good or beneficial or awesome or unique or anything like that. It's just not something on my radar currently. But I do follow crypto news, especially news that, for what that comes out that's related to what I'm doing. I tend to take a look. Roger Johnson, Chainlink. Right on, Chainlink. I don't know if that's a question, but yeah, Chainlink. Right on. All right, guys, we're a little over an hour. Anybody else want to ask a question before I get back to my calls, virtual meetings, and standard self-isolating work schedule? Yeah, sure. I think I warned this one on the, there we go. Actually, I have this other thing. I would show it to you, but unfortunately, it's not charged. So I'll have to wait. I'll have to wait till next week. All right, cool, guys. I will go make XCM great. That is always a goal, and we will get there, guys. Like I said, I've said this a million times in the show, but I don't give up. And I'm telling you, the recipe for success is don't give in to failure. You will fail in life many times. You will fail more than you succeed. Every successful person has failed more than they've succeeded. That can be failure of individual decisions. It can be failure from whatever. But at the end of the day, those who don't give up and don't give in to failure succeed. That's just how the world works. And that's me. I don't give in. I don't throw in towels. My towels never get thrown in. I do put them in the wash, but I don't throw them in. I gently place them into the washing machine. So yeah, look, guys, XCM will be great. We will get there. CoinMetro, right on. Have a good weekend, guys. As I always say, well, I guess you can't spend time with friends. Well, spend some virtual time. Have a Zoom meeting, a Skype call, a WhatsApp call, whatever, with some friends and family. Reminisce how it used to be when you can actually see each other in person. Read a book. Watch the same nonsense on Netflix for the 5,000th time. Eat some ice cream. Get fat like everybody else in the world. Be thankful that you don't have to go sweat in a gym, even though you probably should be sweating in a gym. And try to sneak out and take a walk. Don't get arrested while doing so. And since you're at home all day long with nothing really better to do, I mean, buy some XCM. I mean, what else could possibly brighten your day more than helping making XCM great again? There you go, guys. So in other words, why do we fall, sir, so that we can learn to pick ourselves up? That is correct. So I'll leave you guys with that. Tag me on Telegram at Kevin Murcko. Tag me on Twitter at Kevin Murcko. Tag me on Instagram at Kevin Murcko. Tag me wherever you want to tag me. If you have a question, post it in Telegram. I'll answer it when I can. See you guys in there this weekend, more than likely, and see you guys here next week. And onwards and upwards as always. Stay safe. Don't get sick. If you are sick, don't panic. And try and follow the rules the best you can. Cheers, guys. See you next week.